Hi, welcome to Prophecy in the News. I'm Doug Woodward, your host today. In the studio with us is author, speaker, talk show host, Paul McGuire. Paul, we're really pleased to have you with us again at Prophecy in the News.
Doug, it's great being on your program, and I'm looking forward to talking to you again.
Absolutely. Well, we've got a lot to talk about. You've just written a new book, which I'm going to hold up, which we're going to talk about today, Trumpocalypse, which is a mouthful to say. This is such a timely issue. There's so much going on right now with Donald Trump as president, and you all have done, I think, a great service in providing a lot of insight as to how we've gotten to where we are today. Well, first off, talk a little bit about the name Trumpocalypse. That's kind of, as I said, that's a mouthful, and it obviously wants to convey what it is that you're going to talk about in this book.
Well, we came up with the title Trumpocalypse. There was a lot of usage of the term Trumpocalypse in the secular media, basically alluding to the mythology that Trump was possibly emotionally unstable, which is not true, and that he would press the nuke button.
Right.
So we decided to not apologize for the word. We wanted to turn the word around, and we called it Trumpocalypse to gather those people that would be maybe against Trump or for Trump. And then we wanted to incorporate the last days, Bible prophecy, and the deep state. And the next thing we knew, the book started rocketing, and Troy Anderson and I wrote the book. And
once again, you've got a bestseller, I think.
Yes, and the thing about this is the most unique book I've ever written. And of course, it's a partnership with myself and Troy. This was different than any other. I've written 31 books. This was different than any other book that I've written. The sense of a divine call from God to write this book, because what we were concerned with so much was the enormous magnitude of the lies being told by the mass media 24/7. We have never seen, as you know, Doug, any politician, any figure in history demonized, attacked, lied about, distorted 24/7 by the globalist controlled mass media. Nothing like it. Late night comedy shows attacking him. So this is what gets me. And it's like, well, we also wanted to answer the questions that people who are Christians had about, well, is Trump somebody of God or not? But look at it this way. You've got every major witches' coven in the United States meeting on a regular basis to literally pray prayers and cast spells against Trump and everybody who voted for Trump.
Right.
So the entire witchcraft community and the witches, high-level witches, are united against him. The Satanic Church is united against him. The Marxists are against him. Radicals all over the nation are against him. The elite globalists can't stand him because he's threatening to take the only cookie jar left in the cookie jar and maybe give it out to the American people. Everybody in the world hates these guys.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Everybody hates Trump except for we the people.
Right.
Who that built America.
Yep.
So let's do the math. And I know you could do the math already, and you already have. Let's do the math. If everybody that has an evil agenda is against Trump, it's kind of a no-brainer, then Trump must be doing something good or righteous, or why would they attack him?
Right. Now, the whole issue of the mockingbird media and all that.
Right.
I want to talk about that in a moment. But, the name Trumpocalypse sort of suggests that Trump and the apocalypse are somehow associated. Are you saying that Trump will trigger the apocalypse? And is the apocalypse of the Bible, or is it the apocalypse of the elite?
The last question I'm laughing at because I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
The apocalypse of the elite. There is innuendos in there of the apocalypse of the elite. We believe very strongly, to be blunt, that God raised up Donald Trump to give America a divine reprieve, not because America deserves it. It's an act of grace. God raised up Trump as an admittedly imperfect man, and we go through the biblical justification for that. Trump is an imperfect man, but so was the king of Babylon that God used to rescue his people. So was Pharaoh, an imperfect man that God used to deliver his people. If God can't find one of his own men, a Christian or somebody to do the job, he's going to find an imperfect man to do the job.
Yeah, certainly every president that we're familiar with going back throughout the 20th century was highly imperfect.
Right, and the irony is when Trump emerged on the scene, he exposed the fraudulent nature of our entire political economic system. So Trump is hated because, as you know, Trump is, all the globalist elite consider, these are their words, they consider Donald Trump the single greatest threat to their globalist agenda. So let me just add, and we deal with the economic part of this in the book Trumpocalypse. But what is the globalist elite economic agenda? You'll never hear it in the mass media because they're controlled by the globalist elite. Currently, the globalist elite represent 1% of the population of planet Earth. But they own 99% of the wealth.
Yes.
2 years ago, before we started on Trumpocalypse, I think we mentioned it in our other book, The Babylon Code, the globalist elite represented 3% of the population of Earth, but they controlled 97% of the wealth. Now, tell me how all these trade treaties, and we expose the true nature of the trade treaties in Trumpocalypse. And thank God for Trump mentioning it, because most Americans had no idea. The Republican-backed, the Democrat-backed trade treaties, they created a situation where 80,000 manufacturing jobs left the U.S., they bankrupted the middle class, they bankrupted the working class, and today we have a situation where 1% of the population controls 90% of the wealth.
Right.
That, my friends, is what the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, and the globalist elite have in mind for you. So when Bono, or whatever his name is, with his new propaganda video where he's practically bowing to the United Nations as God, as Bono is singing his ridiculous song, I mean, you know, Bono may be a good artist. I like his music, but when it comes to having a brain that comprehends globalism and economics, he's got a wind tunnel between his ears. Okay? How can you support the UN, which is the vehicle for 1% of the wealth, 1% of the population controlling 97% of the wealth?
No, it's the whole issue of the UN, of course, is an issue that in and of itself is controversial and one worthy of a discussion. But let's go back and talk a little bit more about this issue of sort of reprieve. Does Trump represent a reprieve, or does he represent some sort of a restoration? I was going to read a quote from a friend of ours, Jan Markell, the founder of Olive Tree Ministries, and she also has the radio show Understanding the Times. So she asked this question, so is the rapture on hold? And she says, are happy days here again? I am sensing, she says, that even rapture-watching believers, some anyway, now think that the event is delayed while America returns to prosperity. Thanks to the 2016 election results, we may now return to the role of international leader. A report following the presidential election said that in the wake of Brexit and Donald Trump, the European Union may fall apart. Have prophecy watchers been proven wrong? Neither of these fit into the presumed agenda, which I think by that she means scenario. So how do you interpret the events that are happening globally, what's happening in the EU, really what's even happening in the United States right now, all of the activity in Washington, D.C., the budget issue, the Nunes memo, that whole story. How do you interpret that in light of sort of the traditional prophetic scenario? Is Trump altering that? Should we expect something different is about to happen?
First of all, we deal specifically with Donald Trump and the prophetic nature and role that Donald Trump is playing in Trumpocalypse. What I would say is this. God's prophetic word will stand literally as it is written in his word. So we believe that God's prophetic word will play out exactly as the book of Revelation and the rest of the Bible predicts that it will. But having said that, you've written many books on Bible prophecy, speak at conferences like we do. There are disputes within scholars and researchers of Bible prophecy. But let's just take this verse, occupy until I come, that Jesus Christ talked about. Now, I'm not talking about Reformation theology or dominionism or anything like that. I'm simply talking about Jesus Christ said to the church, occupy the land spiritually until I come, which could mean the second coming to some people, the rapture of the church to others. Let's just say it's the rapture of the church. We're to occupy the land until he comes. Our land is America. We're to occupy it spiritually. That means we have to understand that America, traditionalism better than most Christians. The Bible and Christian history talks about American exceptionalism. Now, the Bible obviously doesn't talk about America per se, but when the Pilgrims and Puritans founded America in the 1600s, they entered into a covenant with God based on the covenant that God made with the children of Israel in Ezekiel 38, the blessings and the curses. So the Pilgrims and Puritans made a covenant with Almighty God over America and the future of America. That's the reason America became the greatest nation on earth economically, with freedoms, with inventions, technology, the whole thing, up until recently, when we began to move away from God to Marxism. We don't call it Marxism, we call it progressivism.
Socialism.
But it's
Right.
they're still worshiping the funky guy with the beard. Not you, you got a
Right.
beard, you're a handsome guy.
but
okay?
my beard's
The
nicely
Karl Marx
trimmed.
beard, okay?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Which is a great philosophy. You know, I don't want to get on a sidetrack, but the millennials, God bless them. I gave birth to some. You know,
Me too.
Okay. I mean, absolutely clueless. Absolutely clueless. Communism, socialism, Marxism has not produced one workers' paradise ever on planet Earth.
It hasn't.
But capitalism has, because capitalism is a biblical economic system. So you can talk to your college friends, and if you're a Christian and you've bothered to do your homework, capitalism is an expression of biblical thinking. Globalism, as we point out in Trumpocalypse, globalism is, God specifically says in the Word of God, Genesis 11, God is a nationalist, he's for patriotism, and he's for independent nation states. Now, the reason we know that, God came down and judged Mystery Babylon. What did he do? He divided Mystery Babylon, which was the world's first one world government, into separate nation states as a check and balance. In the same way, God moved upon our founding fathers to have different authorities in government, like the judicial branch, the presidential branch, as checks and balances. So God Almighty, in his word, tells us he's a nationalist, and he is not a globalist, and he's for patriotism. Now, Trump gets it, okay? And people, I don't know if Trump is really saved or not, but I do know this. He's acting as if God's word is true. So who would I rather listen to? A Christian who says he's saved and acts like God's word is not true or doesn't even know what God's word is saying? Or a president that may be imperfect, that God gave us by grace, but is acting upon the biblical truths as if they were true?
Obviously, you like controversial subjects.
I love them. I love them.
Let me stop and talk a little bit about your book, Prophecy in the News. We want to offer the book, Trumpocalypse, which the subtitle is The End Times President, A Battle Against the Globalist Elite, and the Countdown to Armageddon. So we're offering this for $24.95. Highly recommend it. I've read the book very carefully, and like the other book, The Babylon Code, which is a terrific book, which you and I did some interviews in this studio, I think about 18 months or so ago. And it too is a wonderful, wonderful book. These two do fit together very well. We'd like to offer this book for $23.95. Again, this book for $24.95, or the two together for $44.95. And so there'll be on your screen information pertinent to either the website where you can order the book or a phone number that you can call and talk to one of our friendly persons here at Prophecy in the News and order the book that way as well. So anyway, I recommend these highly, and these are books. They're beautiful. They're nice hardcover, pretty covers. Don't pay attention to this one. I happen to have an early draft copy of the book, so I could begin to read and study it. So, all right. So I want to get back into this issue of the news media.
Okay.
One of the phrases that has come with Donald Trump is the issue of fake news. What are we to make of the mainstream media? What are we to make of this issue of fake news? And, is Trump right? Is the media absolutely not telling us the truth?
Unfortunately, Trump is telling us the truth when he coined the term fake news. It's interesting. The Washington Post did this delightful promotional film about themselves called The Post,
Yeah.
which is a great fictional, delusional belief about their journalistic integrity. Because back then they had no journalistic integrity, and they were highly financed by the CIA. That's
Right.
a matter of record.
Right.
Many of the biggest newspapers and media outlets, including the internet search engines and stuff, have been financed by CIA money. And the question is this. The reason they're fake news is because they're not telling the truth. If we went back 25 years ago or 30 years ago, 150 different corporations owned the mainstream media. So you had different points of view, which gave you some kind of journalistic integrity. Today, we have only 6 corporations, globalist corporations, foreign ownership, that control the majority of the mainstream news. There's a few exceptions here and there. Yet
Very few, very small.
very few, very small. And that's why they all say the same thing all the time, okay? I mean,
Almost literally. If you
Almost
watch
literally.
a compilation, you'll
Right.
see them use the same phrase from 50 different stations. They'll be saying the same phrase. They are just basically a mockingbird.
that's right. It's interesting you should use the word mockingbird, as you know well, Doug. Operation Mockingbird was a literal CIA operation. Some say that it ended, some say it continued. I can't tell you whether it continued or ended, but it did exist at one time, where the CIA openly bragged that they controlled massive numbers of big-name journalists, big-name news shows, motion picture studios, television studios, and they used all of our media as a propaganda arm subversively. But today, it's 6 globalist corporations, and that's why the average American doesn't know that 1% of the globalist elite control 97% of the wealth. That's why they didn't know that the trade treaties were designed. How do you think the globalist elite in 2 years moved from controlling 97% of the world's wealth to 99% of the world's wealth
Right.
in 2 years? The globalist trade treaties, which nobody's allowed to read, and of course the media is not going to tell you what's in it.
Right.
They are the Orwellian shock troops. They're the shock troops of Big Brother. They are the thought police. They are designed to take the average American and pulverize the average American's brains and mold them into like a clone.
Yeah, let me bring you back to that point a little bit more forcefully. You mentioned Project Mockingbird, which was basically putting writers for various newspapers basically on the payroll of the CIA to intentionally slant their news. And this started back in the 1970s.
Right.
And so, they had, I think at some time, something like 200 or 300 magazines, newspapers on their payroll.
That's right.
And this is pretty well
And
documented now.
it's a fact.
Yeah, this is a fact.
Yeah.
This is not a conspiracy theory.
Right.
This really is a fact. And so you have this kind of media focus by what we would call the globalists. And so really, I guess to bring this point out, what's the theory behind why you need to control the media?
Well, it's time for everybody to grow up, okay?
Yeah.
We live in America, we're good-spirited people. We are not perfect, but we're a good people. So we expect other people to behave in a good way. But the fact is, the world has some very, very, very evil people. And they think nothing of slaughtering entire populations for their planned agenda of zero population growth. They think nothing of decimating the working class or middle class. Because as we point out in Trumpocalypse, it's only America, because of its Christian ethos and its Christian principles. America is the only nation on planet Earth that ever had a prosperous middle class where people had freedoms, upward mobility, the American dream. We're the only nation on Earth.
That's right.
And it was because of our Christianity.
And that is what is supposed to be meant by American exceptionalism.
Exactly, right.
Right.
So American exceptionalism is, that's why, I mean, look, does the mainstream media tell you the fact, and this is obvious, nobody is trying to swim in or sneak in or tunnel into the former Soviet Union, Russia.
Right.
They're not trying to get into an Islamic extremist country. They're not trying to get into China or North Korea.
Or Cuba.
Nobody is looking for the Cuban dream.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of people in Hollywood, like Oliver Stone, looking for the Cuban dream.
Right.
After he's had much too much marijuana. Nobody's looking for the Cuban dream, the Russian dream, the Chinese dream. They're looking for the American dream, American exceptionalism, but because, as we show in Trumpocalypse, it comes out of the Bible. On top of that, because of our Christian founding fathers, we have freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of the press, to a large degree. But if we don't stand up and pray for our nation and back our president in legal, law-abiding ways, we're going to lose those freedoms.
Yeah, that's a perfect segue. I was going to read a quote from the book that you and Troy wrote, and you said this. I'll ask you to comment on it. Trump, despite his imperfections, may paradoxically pave the way for this spiritual rejuvenation, followed by the greatest event in history, the second coming of Christ. We believe, that's you and Troy, believe God has raised up Trump to fight the globalist elites and to plan their plan to unleash the New World Order on humanity. We need to, these are really three things you say. We need to stand with and pray for our president, live righteous lives, and seek the Lord's guidance. As long as we do that, Trump will not be defeated by the dark forces aligned against him. And we believe God will break the New World Order, at least temporarily, because Jesus Christ is Lord. Wow, that's quite a bit. That's a strong affirmation, obviously, in favor of what Trump really is doing. Would you like to comment further on that?
Yeah, I mean, I was stirred by the words, not because Troy and I wrote them or whatever, but because I could feel the heartbeat of God.
Yeah.
As we felt the heartbeat of God as we wrote the book. We felt the hand of God upon us, and it's a very humbling thing. And, you know, the church is largely brainwashed. We're all feeling the effects of the brainwashing in America because the globalists want it that way. That's why they raised up John Lennon, a heroin addict who was a halfway decent musician. But he sang his song. Imagine
we might disagree on that. I think he was pretty good.
Look, of all my Beatles, he was the favorite one.
Absolutely.
Okay? But John Lennon, a great musician.
Yes.
Okay? Imagine there's no heaven, no nations, no countries, no God. All right, and then Bono does his imitation act, a couple of decades later. That's the mantra of the globalists. They want a godless one world order. Now, here's the thing. God, I don't know how, I get emotional when I talk about this.
Okay.
God has a plan for America. Mm-hmm. The Pilgrims and Puritans escaped persecution in the 1600s. They were fervent, Bible-believing, born-again Christians on fire for God. Mm-hmm. They had a first great awakening. Charles Finney in the First Great Awakening. The fire of God, the revival of God, the great awakening of God, that spiritual power embedded its way into our Constitution, Bill of Rights, our whole legal structure, our whole nation. It was that formula, if you will, the Bible integrated with our society and politics, that birthed the most powerful nation in the history of civilization, because it was on a foundation of Christianity, not secular humanism or progressivism or Marxism. Now we've lost that. God has given us a man who just happens to believe in America, capitalism, free enterprise. He happens to believe in God. He has decency and character. But because of that, you have people. God help us. I don't know if it's true or not, because I'm not on the inside. I hope it's not true. I hope it's not true what I keep seeing in the media, that high-level directors of the FBI and the CIA are conspiring. In our book, I had an opportunity to talk to a guy who just came from a meeting in Washington, D.C. He just came from a meeting with Trump, but before that he was pulled aside. We described the account in Trumpocalypse, and one of the highest level Republican leaders told him the deep state is trying to assassinate Donald Trump.
Right.
That's bone-chilling.
Yes.
If we don't stand up for righteousness and pray for this man, why would anybody hate light so much? Why would they want to assassinate a good man?
Well, and that, of course, opens up lots of areas we could go. We only have a couple of minutes, though.
Okay.
But to really continue to reinforce what you just indicated, I'll read one more short quote here. You indicated, again, we've been talking about the first 20 pages of your book, basically, so it's very rich. Dozens of faith leaders and prophecy experts interviewed for Trumpocalypse agree that we're in the season preceding events during the end of days. This is even more reason to get out of our comfort zones, to stand up to the New World Order, and to do our part in the end-time harvest many believe will usher in 1 billion souls into God's kingdom. You have about a minute. You might comment a little bit more on that, because I know this is such a passion of yours.
Right. America, among other things, God wants America prosperous and free right now because God wants to bring about a last days soul harvest. God is love. He wants to win as many people to Jesus Christ and bring them into heaven as possible. He needs America, because we're the only country that can do it, to be the launching pad for this last days soul harvest. If that isn't a good enough reason to get behind a president that is behind that kind of mission, I don't know what is.
No, absolutely. And I think that I would just say that the book that you and Troy have written, Trumpocalypse, it really is an education for really learning about what it is that many evangelical leaders are sensing about the day in which we live. That why it is that an imperfect person like Donald Trump, who is very imperfect, why it is that perhaps he has had an amazing conversion over the last several years. He's gotten very focused on the power of God. He's been touched by it, surrounds himself with evangelicals, and so forth. So anyway, this book is a great education. I commend you, Paul and Troy, for the work that you've done. Encourage folks to get the book, to read it, and you will not be disappointed. So, Doug Woodward again for Prophecy in the News. Thank you very much for joining us, and keep looking up.